السلام عليكم.
Walaikum salam. How are you, Ibrahim?
حال.
What's up?
الحمد لله. شو مداير؟
Please, good. Okay, so I'm not sure if Noah is going to join.
مش نفس الرابط متاع المرة اللي فاتت.
No, this is a new one because each 4 lessons have a new link. You get the idea. 4 lessons. Okay, so I sent you now this one should work for the next 4 lessons. It should work normally, no problem. Okay. All right. Okay, so so let's continue from where we stopped last time. Let me go to the book.
Okay.
All right, so we have tell me a little bit about what you think of the level. Do you find it okay, easy, hard, boring, normal? What do you think of this level in general?
يعني لا كويس، غير أنا الجرامر قاعد يا أخي نزيد نوسف روحي فهذه أكبر عائق لي أنا الجرامر.
But what are you doing? I mean, at home with the grammar, are you doing anything extra or just the book? Just what you take in this lesson?
لا في الكتاب grammar
English grammar and use.
شو اسمه هو؟
Grammar and use.
English grammar and use.
Yeah, and are you
هي
using
الوالدة
it?
تبدأ تقري فيها منها.
Good. Yeah, it's very important. You have to catch up with your grammar, Brian, because
لا الجرامر متاعي تعرف.
لا هذا نورمال. أنا
حتى
الوالدة مرة دبيت معها أنا كنت تشيكي نفس قصة بالضبط. When I first came from the UK in my high school نفس القصة بالضبط. أي شخص يتعلم الإنجليزية زي ما تقول يتعلمها حية من أفلام، من سفر، من عرفت كيف زي طريقة التعليم. يكون في الفوكاب يكون كويس، يكون في الليسننج يكون كويس، في السبيكينج يكون كويس، في الجرامر بيضطر يحتاج انه يلحق على الجرامر بتاعه. لازم يدير زي ما تقول سبيشال افورت في الجرامر، بس الثانيات انه خلاص مغطيهم ومرة طيبة فيها ما يخافش عليها، لكن الجرامر بيحتاج شوية دقاقيز يعني. Okay. Let me share the book, but very quickly. Okay, here's the book. Okay, so our last topic. Here, let me just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so if you remember last time we talked, in the previous lesson, we talked about softening your disagreement, right? How to sound a little softer when you generalize, or
more polite,
yeah, to sound a little polite, right? Not to sound too harsh when you disagree with your friends or with your family. So all of these words are sort of, they make the sentence a lot more complicated and annoying, to be honest, but it does make the statement, or it does make the opinion softer. This is the idea. So some of the expressions, like some of them can be rather aggressive or quite aggressive, so you can use these words to help. So we covered this part last time. We also talked a little bit about pronunciation, how the letters OR sometimes can be a little different from each other. They're not always pronounced the same way. This depends, of course, the pronunciation depends whether you're using them in a stressed place. Are they stressed? If it's not stressed, it will sound different. Or whether you're using the letter W before them. This also, of course, changes the pronunciation. All right. So today, let's talk a little bit about homes. We'll talk a little bit in detail, actually, here in this lesson. We are going to learn the different types of homes and different kinds of buildings that, of course, because homes are different. Sometimes they're flats, sometimes they're 1 floor, 2 floors, villas. You know, there are so many different types of houses. We'll talk a little bit about this here in this lesson. And we are going to learn a very, very interesting way of making comparisons, right? Because if you remember, the very basic or elementary way of making comparisons is just putting a comparative adjective. My house is smaller than yours. Your house is larger than ours, right? Smaller, larger. This is the easy way of doing or making comparisons. This is how we learn, or we first learn to make comparisons in elementary using these comparative adjectives: bigger, smaller, taller, shorter, more expensive, more interesting. You know, this is the simple way.
Okay.
But there's another way in which we can say, for example, your house is not as big as ours. Do you see what I did here?
Yeah.
Not as big as ours. Or
Yeah.
so this is another way of comparing. Or for example, your car is not as fast as ours. So not as adjective as, this is another form of comparison. And it's also used in everyday language a lot in English. And I'm sure even when I'm saying it to you, it sounds familiar. It doesn't sound too strange
Yeah.
because you've probably heard it somewhere. And this is true because it's also another form of comparisons we will learn. I think there's another third one. It's using superlatives. I just want to check because I want to give you a rough example. Anyways, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's do it step by step better this way. All right, so let's start with the vocab. So the lesson is called Our New Homes. All right, Our New Homes. But just give me a second. I just need to very quickly send the sound message, okay? Just give me a second,
Okay.
just a second. Okay, so let's start. So here, let's start with the vocab, our new home, our new home. Okay, let's move on to number 1 here. Okay, so it says here, put these words and phrases into groups 1 to 3. Let's take a look first at the groups. What do we have? So group 1 is homes and buildings, okay?
Okay.
Group 2 is parts of a home, And the last one is refers to location. So this means all the words we have here in this box, we are going to try to group them, okay? We don't really need to know what they are. So even if we have a word or two which is new, that's, I think, okay. But let's try to group them at least, all right? So I'll give you the chance to, okay, you can read them. Try to read these words.
In the city center, an apartment block, a balcony. In the country, a loft. In the suburbs,
Yes, in the
a
suburbs.
study. A quiet, lovely, friendly neighborhood. A cottage. In a residential area. A garage. A ditched house. A roof on the ground, first top floor. A terraced house.
Okay, I'm going to underline the few words here. Okay.
Yeah, Esther's.
Can you read this one?
in a residential area.
Okay, but what's after the T? In the word
IAL.
Yeah, and how do we usually say TIA or TION or T, you know, that mix? How do we usually pronounce it?
L, maybe not.
No. I'm not talking about the L. There's no problem with the L. The problem is with the T, the TIA, TIO. How do we usually pronounce them in English when they come together like this? For example, can you read this word?
Connection.
Yeah, how did you pronounce the T?
Chen.
Yeah, why did you pronounce
She.
it? Why did you do that?
Not.
There is a reason. Maybe you don't know it, but there is. The reason is the T, when it's combined with an I and an O, or an I and an A, you know, the T and also the C, CIA, for example, like magician, right? So magician is written with CIAN at the end, or technician. So technician is also written with CIAN at the end. So in these words, whenever you have a T with the I and another vowel, most often it's it's not a T anymore. So how would you read this word? The one, I mean, the phrase with in a
residential.
Yes, that's it. Exactly it. In a residential area. Residential. All right. So this is sort of a rough rule of pronunciation. The T, whenever you're not sure, and you find you find the letter I and another vowel afterwards, it's a very big chance. There's a very big chance it's a sh. Okay. So another word. It's about this word.
Digit.
Can you read the first word?
Digit.
At the top.
لا.
What do we call it when we put two things together? We, them. What's the verb?
Squeeze them. Squash them.
What about this one?
Attach.
Right, that's it. This is the right way to say it. Now, now, can you use that same pronunciation of the verb attach? Use it to read this word.
Detached.
Correct. That's it. That's the right pronunciation. Detached. A detached house. Detached. Okay. Good. We're going great. We're doing fine. What about this one? This one, I'm trying to look for another word which sounds the same. Okay, I don't think there are a lot of words that sound the same. So this is a terraced house. Terraced house. Terraced. Okay, so I know there are many words here which are new, and this is normal because we're talking in detail about different kinds of houses, different details regarding planning and houses and that stuff. But even if you don't know their meanings, we're going to find out in a second. But even if you don't, I want you to try to group them according to, here you're just guessing. Just put them in 1, 2, 3.
In the city center location.
Okay.
أعطيها لك.
Yeah.
حتى an apartment block, homes and buildings.
Right.
A balcony نفس الشيء حطها لك parts of a home.
Okay.
In the country location.
Right.
A loft, I think parts of home.
Maybe. Let me write the numbers of your answers. This way it will make it easier for us to follow and check. Okay, so here number 1. So you think that in the country, this is a location. This means we'll choose 3 for this. It's not clear like this. Let's put it on top. Or maybe in front. All right, so in the country 3, a loft, you think it's a place
Parts
at
of home.
Part of home. So let's use 2 for this. Okay, what about in the suburbs?
Location.
Okay, so this means 3 for in the suburbs. A study.
Parts of home.
Okay, so we are going to choose 2 for this.
Location in a quiet, friendly neighborhood.
Yeah, I think this one is sort of obvious.
A cottage.
Yeah, a cottage.
Homes and buildings, maybe.
Okay, let's choose that. In a residential area.
Location.
Yeah, because even if we don't know the meaning of residential, area sorts of.
Area.
Yeah, it gives us the
clue.
Yeah.
A garage, parts of home. A parts of home. 2.
Sorry.
Detached house, homes and buildings. A roof, parts of home. On the ground, first, top floor, parts of home. هذه كان بفضلك تعودها لي. Can you say it again?
A terraced house.
A terraced house. Terraced house, homes and buildings.
Okay, so it's 1.
Stairs, parts of home.
All right. Okay, so now let's take a look at the vocab section or the vocab summary. Maybe they'll give us a little info, and maybe we can also see some pictures or photos which might explain some of the houses. So let's go there, 138, and let's see. Okay, so here are some of the words we talked about. All right, can you see? I just ignore the numbers for now, but can you see the pictures?
Yes.
Apartment block is clear. It's where you find all the flats, right? So it's
عمارة.
Yeah, عمارة, right, it's clear. Then we have a cottage. What do you think a cottage is? From the photo you can see here.
Home in the in the country.
That's it.
The country.
Yeah. It's usually a home in the country. It's a cottage. Okay, can you see the detached house?
Yes.
Well, how would you describe this in Belibi? What does it look like? Detached. The key here is in the word detached is, do you see it attached to anything else?
No.
Yes, that's it. This is the key to a detached house. So it's not part of any other buildings. There's nothing on its side, behind it. There's nothing on top of it or underneath it, like a flat, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one is a terraced house.
Yes.
So what is a terraced house?
The opposite of a detached house.
It's exactly right. Yes, it's the opposite of a detached house, because you have houses on the left and on the right. It's like a flat, but it's horizontal, not vertical. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the terraced house is very common in England. Maybe not common in the US. I don't think they have them. Maybe only in New York they have them in some areas. But in England and the UK, they're quite common, terraced houses. Okay, and you have to be a little careful with the pronunciation, terraced, because if you don't, it sounds like terrorist, right?
Hey.
So you need to be a little careful. Okay, so these are some of the answers. Let's see a little more. Let's go down a little. Let's scroll down. So here's a nice tip. Let's check the tip first. We can say apartment block or apartment building or a block of flats. So here it's just optional language. If you want to say apartment block, fine. Apartment building, fine. Block of flats, fine. All right, let's see parts of the house, parts of a home. We have the balcony, which you know, the garage, the loft. So you are right, because you use loft, you used it as part of a home, right? This is, I remember your answer. Okay, so where is the loft?
We don't have it in Libya.
No, we don't.
Because it's Libya's desert, kind of a sunny place. But it's where it's under the roof.
Right. Exactly right. So it's under the roof. Yeah, you can store things in the loft. In some houses, they even make it
a room.
You know, kind of a room. I mean, if you treat the walls and everything, and you put insulation and stuff, it can work as a room as well. All right, so the loft. This is the loft under the roof, right? Then we have a study.
Yes.
I think a study is clear from the name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a place where you work and where you study, usually with your laptop and there are books or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, roof is clear, you know roof, and stairs is clear, you know stairs. All right, so it says we can also say upstairs and downstairs to think of the floor up. So I think you left your wallet upstairs. If you're going downstairs, can you make me some clear? There's nothing new here, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's check the other words on the right side. So we have locations. These are some of the choices you chose. So in the city center, in the country, in the suburbs, all of these are locations. In a quiet neighborhood, in a residential area, on the ground floor, on the top floor. All right. Okay, now can you read the suburb? What does suburb mean, Brian, according to the definition here? What does it mean?
An area where people live outside the center of a city.
Okay, all right. What about the next word, the word afterwards?
نكمل يعني.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, they lived in the suburb of the New York. People who lived in the suburbs have commute into the city.
They have to commute into the city. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to translate suburbs بالليبي, correct. That's it. That's it. Okay, I think, okay, just a second. Let me check. I think Nuha wants to start. Just a second. Okay, let's just invite her. Okay. All right. So, suburbs, you're right about suburbs. What about neighborhood? You know it. Lively. Have you heard this adjective? Lively. A lively neighborhood, Ibrahim. Have you heard of this adjective?
I think.
What do you think it means? If you want to use an Arabic word, believe it, بتقول lively.
حيوي.
حيوي. Not exactly.
يعني زحمك وجودك.
Yes, maybe this is correct. Yes, it's the opposite of something, opposite of boring, or opposite of quiet, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Next word we have. What's the next word? Residential area. Okay. Now I need you to know that the word residential, it comes from resident. So what does resident mean when we say he's a resident?
He rents.
He rents. Yes. Someone who lives in a place is a resident, right?
Yeah.
So here when we say residential, what's the difference between a residential area of the city and a commercial area of the city? What's the difference? Is there a difference between residential and commercial? Hi, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
All right. I thought you weren't signing because when I posted the link on the page and checked the inbox, you didn't send any. Thought maybe you were busy or something.
I was out, so I was out of coverage.
I see. Yeah, because this is the new link.
I didn't have internet when I'm out.
All right. Okay, no problem. So we were, Brahim and I, we were talking about houses and homes and, vocab related to residential areas and, all of that stuff. So we were talking about the meaning of a residential area, and Ibrahim was just telling me the difference between a residential area and a commercial area. So what's the difference, Ibrahim? What do you think?
Commercial area where there's a lot of shops and
correct.
Business.
Yeah, business centers, companies, corporations, offices. So here, commercial area. If you want to think of a commercial area in Tripoli, what is it? Which area is a commercial area in Tripoli?
بن عاشور. نوفلين. سياحية.
I don't think so. I think that العماد, Tripoli Tower, that area. I think maybe more the city center, because you have offices, you have.
And in بن عاشور والسياحية, they have a lot of shops.
Correct, but here, usually in English, when they say commercial, they usually mean business rather than shops. Because shops or boutiques, usually you can find them in residential areas sometimes, but commercial usually are buildings which an area where there are no neighborhoods, not a lot of houses to live. You get the idea. So, for example, in Dat Laimad and Tripoli Tower, there are a few apartment blocks actually behind Tripoli Tower and the other tower. There is a residential area, but it's mainly commercial. I think most people who go there have stuff to do. They want to buy a ticket. They want to finish some business work. It's related to work. This is the idea of commercial. Like in the US, we have Manhattan, right? So it's the business district of the city. It's where the big companies are, the banks. So this is the idea. Okay. Now, in here we have a few tips. Can you read the tips, Ibrahim? Tell us a little more about the tips.
In the UK, the suburbs often have a lot of detached houses and are usually quite expensive places to live.
Yeah. So it's a bit like the opposite of the situation in Libya, I think, right? In Tripoli, at least, because in Tripoli, usually the most expensive places are, I think, closer to the center of the city. I mean, like Ben Ashur, Noflin, these are usually the most expensive places to live. And if you go to the suburbs, if you go to maybe Anzara, even Anzara is not cheap anymore, but it used to.
لا لا.
It used to be cheap in the past. But if you move to the suburbs, it's usually cheaper, right?
Yes.
But in the UK, it says it's the opposite, because in the suburbs they have the detached houses. Do you see the detached houses, the ones we talked about?
Yeah.
The sort of big house with a garage and no other houses in front of you or next to you. Of course, in your opinion, what do you think is more? Where do you think is more expensive to live? In a detached house or in a terraced house? Which do you think is more expensive to live?
To live. Detached house.
Yeah, I agree. I think the detached house is probably much more expensive, because a terraced house is usually very small, and it's usually in the city center or near the city center. So a terraced house, a detached house, you probably need to be a little rich to live in one of those in the UK, right? Okay, so here are a few other tips about ground floor. Okay, because I think even in Libya we have a little problem with the difference between the first floor.
Yeah. Underground floor,
Some people say first floor and they mean level 1. Some people
the
say
ground
first floor, we mean ground floor. So here, can you read this tip, please, Ibrahim? Because here they're trying to explain.
The ground floor in UK means the first floor. US. First floor UK means the second floor in US.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, I think here in Libya we use the British system, because the ground floor ديما نقولوا أرضي، شقة في الدور الأرضي. بعدين نقولوا first floor نقولوا عليه دور أول، صح ولا؟ دور ثاني، دور ثالث. But in America, even the one on the ground is number 1, first floor. So the ground floor is the first floor in the US. So I think we use a British system to talk about flats, at least in Libya, I think. So we can say ground floor flat, top floor flat. Yeah, this is clear. If you live in the bottom, in the ground floor, you have a ground floor flat, and the top floor flat. All right, so this is some of the vocab we covered in the first exercise. So this means your first answer, your first question was, all of it was right. The one with the grouping, remember? Okay, so let's move on to our next exercise. So here it says, what are the 5 most important things to look for in a new home? Use words and phrases from number 1 and some of your own ideas. All right. So some examples here. A garden or a balcony are important, according to this person. And also the house should be in a quiet neighborhood. All right, let's see Noha here. Tell us a little bit about your opinions and your thoughts on this question, Noha. What do you think are the 5 most important things to look for in a new home? If you're going to buy a new home, or you're going to move, if you're going to move house, what do you think are the 5 most important things? And of course, you can use all the words here in this box, in the vocab box here, and you can also use your own ideas. Okay.
Okay. I will prefer a new home to be detached, first of all, and not very far from city center, and in the middle, and not very close, because I like to be a little bit quiet. I don't like the noisy of the traffic and the cars outside.
Okay.
And for third thing, I would like to have a big yard, large yard, backyard, usually.
Okay.
And I would like to about the area that the house in. I'd like it to be all my neighborhood is like my home. All of them are detached houses, because I don't like that make living in our neighborhood is more quiet and more peaceful.
Do you think people who live in flats are noisier?
Not because they are bad people, but living in flat buildings or in
Apartment blocks.
Yeah. Usually there's a lot of people there in the same building. So you could have the good one and the bad one. The bad one will make the life of the others horrible.
So you mean one bad neighbor can ruin the experience for everyone?
Yeah, can ruin all the neighborhood. That's it.
Yeah, but what about detached houses? Maybe you get a bad neighbor and he's right, not near you. I mean, in the same street, or it doesn't affect you when you live in a detached house.
Not exactly, but it will be. You can it can be determined easily. Oh, that neighbor is bad one, so we can avoid him, and that's it. Okay, but in high buildings or flat buildings, it's hard to do that because you cannot sort out people like this to know who's the bad, who's the good. There are a lot of people, so.
Yeah. Okay, I see your point. What do you think, Brian? What are your thoughts on the 5 most important things to have in your house if you want to move house or buy a new home, for example?
Garage.
It should have a garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has 2 floors, maybe.
Maybe it should have 2 floors. So this means if it has 2 floors, it's a detached house.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
But sorry, Ibrahim, I'm interrupting you. Excuse me. For the point that you mentioned, Mister, about detached house, there, what do we call the buildings here in Libya when it's already attached houses, okay, but they build another floor or another story.
Yeah.
So it's we can say it's 2-floor building on 2 stories, but is it detached or?
And belongs to the same person, right? Belongs to the same owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a detached house. Maybe you can say 2-story, 3-story detached house. Maybe you can just say how many stories it has, but it's not an apartment building, right? Because the houses, are they separate? I mean,
but in the both sides, it's not separated.
You mean, so it's the same size as an apartment building?
Yeah.
So for example, 3 or 4 floors. I think if it's 3 floors or 2 floors, you can just say detached house. Because most of the time a detached house, like the one here we see in the picture, most of the time it's 2 floors already. A detached house is almost always 2 floors. Do you get the idea? So you can just say a 3-story detached house maybe. But an apart.
My question is, when you see it, for example, in heavily populated areas like Mansoura, for example, or some places where you can find the houses, it's all of them is private property, but they are there is no boundaries between them. It's close to each other. There's one wall separating them, but one of them maybe want to build another floor. And do we call it detached house?
No, I think if the walls are shared, they call them a terraced house. Terraced. I'll show you the picture.
Because even if they are duplex or
even if there are 2 floors. Can you see the photo here? Can you see this? I don't know if you've been to the UK before, but these are very, very common in the city center in the UK.
Yeah, I've seen them in the movies. Yeah,
especially in England, very, very common. In America, I don't know, but this is a terraced house, and even here you can see that this terraced house has 2 floors. Do you see? But it shares the wall with the next 2 on the left and on the right.
So okay, got it now.
Yeah, so this is
sorry, Ibrahim.
Terraced house. Okay, so Ibrahim, you mentioned the garage is very important, and you prefer to live in a detached house with 2 floors. What else? What else is important?
Yeah, in the suburbs maybe. So I can be near to the city. I don't want to be in the traffic and.
Actually, the suburbs are not near the city.
لا.
Is it okay? You want to be far away from the city center?
No.
So you want to be close to the city center?
Yeah, because.
So this means you don't want to live in the suburbs?
لا. I thought it was near to the city.
No, the suburbs are usually on the edge.
Near to the city يعني في النص ما بين شو اسمه the country والcity.
Yes. What did you say, Naha?
At the midpoint.
Yeah, maybe in the sort of in the middle. Not near, because usually at least in the UK they used to use zones. So zone 1 is the center, right middle, like the city center. Then you have zone 2, zone 3, and this is the system they used in London. And I don't think anybody lives in zone 1 because it's mostly commercial and government in zone 1 and museums and these things. But maybe in zone 2, 3, you can find residential areas. So okay, so you don't want it to be in the traffic in the middle, in the center, but you don't want it to be far away either. So somewhere in the middle. Okay, yes. What else is important for you in a house, Brian?
Garden.
Is it important that the garden is big or not big?
مش important.
Okay.
المهم موجود.
Right. And what about the neighborhood? Would you prefer a residential area with no shops, no malls, just other houses? Or would you prefer sort of a more lively neighborhood, cafes, restaurants, maybe a few malls, a few companies? What do you think is better?
When you say, I don't have any idea of commercial. كيف يعني زي مثلا عندنا احنا كيف
تجاري كوميرشال
زي ما تقول
مثلا لا يعني كيف زي عندنا احنا كيف
زي الظهرة مثلا انت لو تسكن في الظهرة جهة كوميرشال حتكون ديما زحمة في شركات هلبة محلات
يعني فيها مكاتب هي شرط فرق مش كلها محلات مثلا زي بن عاشور وحيلاندرز ممكن تلقى شركات مأجرات في حياش لكن هذيك اوفيشلي تلقى محررين عقود، تلقى مصرف، تلقى شركات قديمه مثلا زي الزويتينه، زي شركات النفط مثلا، تلقاهم في المدينه، تلقاهم في الظهر، في الجهات هذيك،
هوتيلات،
في شركات يعني.
Yeah, so it's not
شركات ومكاتب منطقه تجاريه.
That's correct, yes. Because even بن عاشور النوفلين in the inside it's very residential. في جهات يعني ما فيش إلا حياش وشوية شركات مأجرة في الحياش، باقي يعني تلقاها كلها زنق وحياش وخلاص. So this is like you would call this more residential than commercial. So
residential.
All right, so you don't like it, you don't want it to be too noisy. Okay, I see. All right, okay.
نقول مين المدرس قدام الباب.
Yeah, this is a big problem now, even in residential areas. هي واحدة من مشاكل علاش الناس عندهم رد فعل هذا، لأن هو عابين عليه residential neighborhood. فأنا جاي ساكن مثلا في النوفلين ولا في بن عاشور ولا غيرها، هذه residential area، علاش تأجر فيها لشركة؟ Maybe you know there's pros and cons. اللي مأجر عنده الحق واللي متضايقين منه عندهم الحق. It's a bit of
company or school, even they are
schools, and even worse, because we don't have a solution for parking in Libya. We don't have parking, you know, parking buildings and parking lots. عندنا مشكلة في parking. So nobody in residential areas, like, I think this is true even in Europe or even in the UK. If you live in the suburbs and in a nice, friendly neighborhood, of course they wouldn't like it when there are too many parked cars, right? You get the idea. So it's a bit of a complicated issue, I think. Okay. So now we have a little bit of listening. We are going to read about 3 places to rent in Bristol. Okay, so we're talking about Bristol, England, and which one do you like the best? Okay, so first of all, let's read the 3 houses or the 3 homes here which are for rent, and then we can try to form our own opinion. All right, so you can start. Read the first 2, and when you finish reading about the first 2, okay, this way both you can see both of them, fine. So when you finish the first 2, just tell me and I'll scroll down to the last one.
What's the meaning of breakfast food? Room قصدي.
Where is it?
في Redland. The second one.
Breakfast room. It's like a dining room, maybe. Somewhere large kitchen, breakfast room. Maybe it's another way of saying kitchen, because they say kitchen, breakfast room. Maybe it's one of those, you know, those kind of modern kitchens where there's like a bar where you sit.
يعني الكيتشن واسعة فيها مساحة للإفطار.
Yeah, so you can sit in the kitchen too, not just cook.
عادة صغيرونات بوكل هم مطبخهم.
That's right.
مقوي الاسم الحق.
Yeah, breakfast room. Okay, do you want me to scroll down? Show you the third one?
Okay.
All right, what do they mean here by unfurnished? Unfurnished.
مش مؤتت.
Yes, no furniture. So unfurnished, no furniture. So the first one is a terrace house, of course. The second one is a detached house. And the
Yeah.
first one, there's this
Apartment
adjective, spacious. What do you think, Ibrahim, it means, spacious? Spacious terraced house.
خرافي.
خرافي?
No,
يعني حاجة مش عادية ولا
no.
It comes from space.
إيه.
Not space like Jupiter and Mars. No, space like space.
Like roomy.
Do you get the idea? Size. It comes from space like size. The space of an area. It comes from area, space like area. So when we say something is spacious, it means that it has a lot of space.
Okay.
فsometimes يستعملوا فيها هذه في وصف الحياش والديار. Spacious. But you can just say large, big, if you want to. But spacious, they like to use it with buildings because it emphasizes there's lots of space to put furniture.
Can you use the word roomy?
Roomy, you can, yes. Roomy, comfy. Sometimes they say comfy, comfortable. So you can use this, roomy, comfy, yes. All right, let's check the third house. So this is the third one.
2 double bedrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, for you, which one would you choose? Naha.
Detached, for sure.
Yeah, the
Even
second one.
I would pay a little more money, but yeah, second one.
Okay. Why would you choose this one over the other two?
Because it offers more privacy.
There's more privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some people, I think they prefer the company. They like to be around, in a busy place. They like to have neighbors next to them. What do you think of these people who prefer the company? They don't want to be isolated. They think that a detached house
They are alone.
is too isolated. What do you think of these people?
I don't think so. I don't think having detached house, it would mean that you like the isolation or to be isolated. But you can, if you have, you can have, for example, a detached house in lively neighborhood, so you can communicate others and have your private area, private property, or
yeah, this is
you
also
can
true.
enjoy sociability in
correct.
Even if you have
That's true. Yes. Yeah. All right. Okay. And what about you, Ibrahim? Do you agree with Noah's choice about the detached house?
Detached.
Yeah. All right. I think in Libya, I would agree with you. For me, I would agree that yes. But if the choice is in Europe or somewhere where I'm still new, maybe I'll choose the other two.
Cheaper.
Actually.
Yeah.
First of all, cheaper, but this is not the only reason. I think when you have a neighbor that's right next to you, you can always just knock the door. I need this. How about this? Can I help with this? You get someone who's easy to access. Do you get the idea? Because in the West, it's very hard to talk to a person who's not a neighbor or who doesn't work with you or doesn't study with you. You don't just talk.
But I think even if he a neighbor, that's it's not necessary to be sociable.
No, not necessary. No, it's not necessary. He could be a bad neighbor.
He could treat you like always like strange.
Yes.
No matter how much he would see you.
Yeah, so. if you're unlucky and he's a rotten, bad, nasty neighbor, this will happen for sure. But usually even in the West, I've noticed they try to you know, if he's a neighbor, even if he doesn't like you, he'll try to act maybe, or to play along. Do you get the idea? Because he knows that you're next to him, and he's a bit worried. He even if he doesn't like you, he'll think it's better to have him as a friend than an enemy.
Rather than enemy, yeah.
Yeah, so because he's next door, maybe he can steal something from my house. He can take packages, mail. Maybe he can let his dog poo in my garden. You know, they're worried about things like this. So they have to play nice. But I understand your point about the detached houses. In Libya, of course, it would be a very, very bad choice to live in an apartment building. If you can afford to live on your own, it's a lot better to live on your own. All right. So I think I agree with your choices. Let's go to the listening part here. Now we're going to listen to two friends, or two people, Tim and Joe. They're looking for a new place to live. Listen to their conversation. Which place do they want to see again, and why? Of course, when we say here want to see again, because they're sort of going around different houses and
they have been there in these three houses.
Yeah, so here they to see again, maybe it means they're interested. They want to confirm whether they're going to rent this place or not. So this is what we mean by want to see again. Okay, so let's go to the listening part, CD1. Let's go to the track. Here's the audio. Which track is it? 40 something?
42.
42. Let's go to 42. Here it is.
Track 42. Okay, let's start with the first place we saw. What did you think of the terraced house in Bishopston?
Yeah, I thought it was nice. It seems slightly bigger than where we live now.
No, I think it's the same size as our house. It just seemed bigger because it didn't have any furniture in it.
Yes, you're probably right. I thought the back garden was lovely and it had a new kitchen.
Yes, I like the kitchen too. And it's the least expensive place we've seen so far.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so what about the detached house in Redland?
Well, it's one of the oldest houses we've looked at, and I like old houses. They've got a lot of character. It's got more space than the other two places.
Yeah, and it's got a garage, which is useful. But it's quite a long way from the station, which might be a problem.
Yes, you could be right. And it's a little further away from the city centre than we wanted to be.
Okay, and what did you think of the flat in Hotwells?
Well, it's not as big as the other two places.
Yes, that's true, but it is a flat, not a house. Actually, it was a lot more spacious than I'd expected.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? I think that's because of those enormous windows.
Yes, I suppose so. It was different from anything else we've seen.
And it had the most amazing view, you know, all the way down the river.
Yes, that was fantastic, wasn't it?
But it's got the worst kitchen I've ever seen. The cupboards were falling off the wall. And it hasn't got a garden.
So that's a no then?
Yes, I think so. It's just not right for us.
Okay, so what about the other two places? Do you want to go and see either of them again?
Well, the house in Redland was nice, but the back garden was far smaller than I'd expected, you know, for a detached house. It's as small as the one we've got now.
And it was much noisier than the other two. It's on a very busy road.
Yes, that's true.
That might be a problem, especially at night.
Right. So you thought the first place we saw was better?
You mean the house in Bishopston? Yes, I think so. It's very similar to where we live now, so all our furniture will fit in okay.
And it's a bit less expensive than the Redland house.
Okay, let's go back and see it again tomorrow. Then we can decide.
Right. I'll give the estate agent a ring. Have you got their number?
Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious what they agreed on. So it looks like, which one do you think they want to take? They want to rent?
Bishopstone.
Yeah,
No.
the first one. Yeah, the terraced house.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you see how narrow the door is?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember a few weeks ago, I think my uncle was talking about the terraced house he lived in Manchester. He said the door is so narrow that all the sofas that we usually buy here in Libya, and the normal ones that we sit on here, he said they will never fit through the door. So they used to buy them very cheap because nobody buys them. Anybody who has a terraced house cannot use them because they can't bring them in the house. So the big ones, the big sofas, are actually cheaper than the smaller sofas. So he said we bought all the big sofas and then they brought them to Libya. So yeah, this is a problem with terraced houses. The doors are quite narrow, I think. Okay, so it looks like Joe and Tim, they're going to take the terraced house. What's the reason, in your opinion, the main reason from the recording, Noha? Why did they decide on the terraced house, even though it's smaller than the other two?
Because the furniture, its area is close to their former house.
Their current house, you mean?
Their current house. And so their furniture can fit into the area and it's more suitable for their furniture.
Yeah, so they don't need to buy new furniture. This is an advantage, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's cheaper than the Redland one.
Correct, yes. The price is a bit cheaper. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So these are, I think, are the main two reasons. But she also talked about the kitchen. What did she say about the kitchen? Can you remember the one about Bishopston?
New kitchen.
Correct. The kitchen was new, and she also mentioned the backyard, the garden.
Nothing special about garden. They were comparing the Redland one's garden. They said it's smaller than their current garden, the garden that they have now. But I don't know. I don't remember something special about the first one.
Yeah, I think at the first one in the beginning she mentioned how the garden is quite big for the size of the house. I think at the very beginning, before they decided
the backyard.
The backyard. Yeah, I think she talked about it.
They mentioned that it's a little bit big. Big backyard. Yeah.
Okay. So we can move on. All right. So here, number 4, work in pairs. Look at these sentences. Do you think they describe the house in Bishopston, or the house in Redland, or the flat in Hotwells? Okay, so this is sort of a listening in detail kind of question. Let's answer it according to what we know or according to what you remember, and then of course we can do it again to confirm. Play the listening again to confirm. But let me very quickly. I check on Ibrahim. I don't know why he's left. Maybe he's lost his internet. I think he's lost internet. Anyways. Okay, so all we need to do is put B, R, or H in front of the sentence which refers to the house we have in mind. Okay, so number 1, it seemed slightly bigger than where we live now. So this was the terraced house in Bishopston.
Yeah.
Number 2, it's the least expensive place we've seen so far.
I don't know, maybe the third one, I'm not sure about it. Maybe Hotwells, I'm not sure.
Okay, because they've seen 3 places. which are Bishopston, Redland, and Hot Wells. So when you say it's the least expensive place we've seen so far, that means the least expensive of these three. Which one's the least expensive?
The third one. No. Yeah, the terraced house.
The terraced house is the cheapest, yeah. All right, so this means B. Okay, so the least expensive is B.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
السلام.
الضوء هرب صحوني بس.
All right, no problem.
Fortunately.
إيه.
Okay, so Ibrahim, we're doing, we did a listening part, and we're going to listen again. But here we're just sort of guessing these sentences, which houses do they refer to? Because in the three houses that we were talking about, we just listened to a track in which two friends or couple or whatever, they decided on one of them to rent, and they talked about the pros and the cons and the good things, the bad things, and they reached a conclusion. Okay, but now we're just going to comment on these sentences. Which houses do they refer to? Okay, and of course we will confirm them by listening again. All right, so here number 3, it's one of the oldest houses we've looked at. Which one was this? No.
R.
Yeah, the detached house.
Yeah, detached house.
It's a
detached house is the oldest.
Yeah, and in the city, it was the oldest.
Yeah, I thought the trace.
No, actually, the detached house in this story, in this example, it was older in this example.
Yeah, from the photos.
All right, what about number 4? It's a little further away from the city center.
Maybe R.
Maybe R. Maybe the detached house in Redland. Yeah. All right. What about number 5? It was a lot more spacious than I'd expected.
The flat one.
Is it the flat?
Yeah.
And the flat is Hot Wells, H. It had the most amazing view.
H.
Okay, also the flat. It's got the worst kitchen I've ever seen.
The flat.
It was much noisier. The back garden was far smaller than I had expected.
D. R.
Okay, the detached house. It was much noisier than the other two.
Much noisier. R. Because they talk about the it's on the main road or main street or something like this.
So maybe they were worried about the noise at night, right? The cars.
Yeah.
All right. What about number 10?
Trust. H. B.
11. It's a bit less expensive than the Redland house.
H.
Okay, the flat. All right, so here we'll listen again to confirm this. Okay, so I need you also, Ibrahim, to pay attention to these sentences and try to find which houses. Which houses do they refer to? Okay, so and just to remind you, which is what is what. The B is the terraced house. Okay.
Okay.
So the B, let me just show you the picture. This is the B, the photo. This is B, the terraced house. Okay.
Okay.
R.
Area that it's in.
Yeah, exactly. The name of the area, B, Bishopston, but it's the terraced house. R for Redland, and it's the detached house. Hot Wells is H, and we're talking about the flat here.
Okay.
So let's listen.
Track 42. Okay, let's start with the first place we saw. What did you think of the terraced house in Bishopston?
Yeah, I thought it was nice. It seems slightly bigger than where we live now.
No, I think it's the same size as our house. It just seemed bigger because it didn't have any furniture in it.
Yes, you're probably right. I thought the back garden was lovely and it had... Yes, that's true.
Okay, so what about the detached house in Redland?
Well, it's one of the oldest houses we've looked at, and I like old houses. They've got a lot of character. It's got more space than the other two places.
Yeah, and it's got a garage, which is useful. But it's quite a long way from the station, which might be a problem.
Yes, you could be right. And it's a little further away from the city centre than we want it to be.
Okay, and what did you think of the flat in Hotwells?
Well, it's not as big as the other two places.
Yes, that's true, but it is a flat, not a house. Actually, it was a lot more spacious than I'd expected.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? I think that's because of those enormous windows.
Yes, I suppose so. It was different from anything else we've seen.
And it had the most amazing view, you know, all the way down the river.
Yes, that was fantastic, wasn't it?
But it's got the worst kitchen I've ever seen. The cupboards were falling off the wall. And it hasn't got a garden.
So that's a no then?
Yes, I think so. It's just not right for us.
Okay, so what about the other two places? Do you want to go and see either of them again?
Well, the house in Redland was nice, but the back garden was far smaller than I'd expected, you know, for a detached house. It's as small as the one we've got now.
And it was much noisier than the other two. It's on a very busy road.
Yes, that's true.
That might be a problem, especially at night.
Right. So you thought the first place we saw was better?
You mean the house in Bishopston? Yes, I think so. It's very similar to where we live now, so all our furniture will fit in okay.
And it's a bit less expensive than the Redland house.
Okay, let's go back and see it again tomorrow. Then we can decide.
Right. I'll give the estate agent a ring. Have you got their number?
So I think,
just one mistake.
yeah, which one is that?
11, number 11.
Yeah. So the terraced, the terraced house is cheaper than. Oops, we deleted both of them. Yeah, the terraced house. So it's B. But the rest are correct. All right. Okay. Do you have any questions about the conversation, Ibrahim?
No.
Are you there?
Yes.
Did you hear the conversation?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I thought you had, because you talked in the middle of the conversation. I thought you.
Yeah. صار ما فهمتش فجأة ما سمعت شيء بعتلي قلت يس قاعدة تدوي.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we can move on to the next part here. We have, we're going to talk about comparisons here. So it says here, look at the words and phrases in blue. So all the blue words here in exercise 4. And let's answer these questions. Which are comparatives? Which are superlatives? When do we use ER or EST? When do we use? So these are, I think, regular questions about comparatives and superlatives. But let's start with the first one. So, Brahim, which of these words do you know the difference between a superlative and a comparative? Okay. So a comparative adjective is one that has like big, bigger. Bigger is a comparative. It has ER, right? But superlative is the one that's the maximum, biggest. So for example, we can say, my house is bigger than yours, but Ahmed's house is the biggest. So bigger is a comparative, bigger, the ER comparative.
Okay,
but biggest is the superlative. This is the meaning of comparative superlative, okay? But sometimes you can't say bigger and you can't say biggest if the adjective is too long, like intelligent. Let's say we're comparing my three neighbors, okay? And these are their real names. One of them I forgot. So I can say Khalid is more intelligent than Abdul Majid, but I can't remember the third one. But the third one, let's call him Muhammad. But Muhammad is the most intelligent. So here I didn't say intelligenter or intelligentist. You know, it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
I can't do that. The adjective is too long. I can do that with big or small, bigger, smaller, smallest, biggest, yeah. But if the adjective is too long, like beautiful, intelligent, interesting, you have to put more interesting, more intelligent, more beautiful. And if it's the max, you have to say most. The most intelligent, the most interesting, the most expensive. Okay? So comparatives can be done with the ER or with more.
Usually, how much syllable the word should be to use it with comparative? How much? You know?
Yeah. If it's a long one, you have to say more. Like beautiful. You cannot say beautifuler. Have you ever heard of this word, Ibrahim, before? Beautifuler?
No.
No, this is the first time.
Yeah, you can't, because you can't say it. So if you want to compare between two things, you can say the Mercedes is more beautiful than the BMW, or this model is more beautiful, right?
So we can use it. My question is, we can use it with just one syllable word?
Which one? What do you mean? The ER, you mean?
ER, yeah.
Yes.
How can we differ or distinguish the words that we will use ER with it, or
I think with almost all of them, if they have two or more syllables, you have to use more. This is the general idea. So we say, for example,
when you say stupid is not long word, but you can't say stupider.
No, we can. He's stupider. He's the stupidest person I've ever seen. You can use ER. So sometimes in some two syllables you can. The same thing with friendly. Ahmed is friendlier than Khalid. But Abdul Majid is the friendliest. So friendly, it's two syllables, but we can do the ER thing to it. Usually I think the limit, it starts with 3. If the adjective has 3, then you really can't do the ER. Because if you notice, beautiful 3, intelligent is 4, interesting 3. So with 3 and above, we cannot put ER anymore. We have to put more. So I don't think there's a clear rule, but I don't think there's a 3-syllable adjective where we can put ER. Almost every 3-syllable adjective I know, we have to put more or most when we want to use it. Yeah. Okay, do you get the idea? Do you get the difference between comparative and superlative, Brahim?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so from the blue words here, can you tell me which of them are comparatives? From number 1 to 11 here, the blue words. Which of these are comparatives?
Comparative, bigger.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but further.
Correct.
More spacious.
You're right.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
Smaller.
Correct.
Noisier.
Correct.
Better.
Right.
Less expensive.
Correct. You're right. These are all comparatives, because you're comparing between two things. But what about the superlatives? Can you show me the superlatives?
Oldest,
You forgot one.
least expensive.
This is a sort of opposite superlative, right? It's a superlative, but in the minimum. It's like the minimum, the cheapest. So you can. It's just a fancy way of saying cheapest. When you say the least expensive, it's the same thing as saying the cheapest. And by the way, this is a thing they like to do in formal English. This is not formal, but I'm just saying that in formal English, they like to use double negatives. Instead of saying it is common to find monkeys in this region, they will say it's not uncommon to find. Do you see the little trick they did? So let me show you what I mean. So here, yeah, so instead of saying it's common,
not uncommon.
They would.
Infinity.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, double negative. So they will say it's not uncommon. In formal writing, actually, in formal writing, you will see the second one more. That's interesting, right? And this one, number 2 here, it's the least expensive place. They could have said it's the cheapest, right? Why did they do this opposite thing? But this is done. They do this. It's also something which is done in English. All right. So okay. So least expensive is a superlative. Oldest is a superlative. What else, Brian?
Most amazing. Worst.
Correct.
Smaller competitive.
Right.
Much noisier, competitive. The first one is better.
What's the superlative?
لا better competitive.
صح. لأن superlative best. The best. Okay. And the last one, 11, is it a comparative or superlative?
Comparative.
كويس. تمام وصلت لك معناها الفكرة زبطت أو فكرة comparative or superlative. All right, so Noha, you can tell us about number 3 and 4. When do we use ER or EST, and when do we use more and more or most? I think we talked about it, but you can summarize it.
For comparative, when you compare adjectives, EST for the superlative, more for to compare adjectives that we cannot add ER to them, and most to the superlative for the same reason. We can't, for the adjectives that we can't add EST to it.
Right. That's right. Yes. Now here in number 5 it says, okay, let's see if Ibrahim can do this one. It says which comparatives and superlatives are irregular. So let me tell you what is regular first, okay, Ibrahim? So a regular comparative or a regular superlative is this is the normal one, like big, bigger, the biggest, nice, nicer, the nicest, small, smaller, the smallest. These are normal, regular. These are good adjectives, right? They're following a rule. Or even for example, beautiful, beautiful, more beautiful, the most beautiful. All of this is regular. But we have a few adjectives or a few comparatives and superlatives which you cannot make them bigger or smaller. You cannot make them more or less using ER or EST or more or most. And we even have some of them in the 11 examples here. Can you pick them up? Can you spot them?
كيف؟
So هنا الفكرة انك انت بتدور comparative والا superlative مش متقيد بالقاعدة. يعني ما تقدرش او بالاحرى مش مداير ER or EST. It's not using ER or EST. And it's not using more or most. And it's not using less or least. Okay. So which which one can you find here ما فيهاش لا ER لا EST لا more لا most لا less لا least ولا حاجة.
Worst.
صح. Correct. So worst is the superlative. What is the comparative and what is the normal adjective of worst?
هي نفسها. Worse.
Can you say it again?
Worse.
Correct. صح. So you can say, for example, you can say living in Egypt is worse than living in Tunisia. But living in Libya is the worst, right?
Yeah.
And this is a true example, I think. So here, worse. All right. So بعد انت طلعت لنا الcomparative بتاعها. هي هنا حاطين لك superlative. Now, what about Ibrahim? What about the original adjective? الأول بكل اللي من غير مقارنة. Can you spot that one? شن كان هو أصلاً؟
worst.
شن كان قبل ما نقول worse و worst؟ مثلا ديما نقول نبدأ كده بنبدأ بadjective عادي زي big. البيج بيولي لك bigger بيولي لك biggest. beautiful بروحها بتولي more beautiful بعدين بتولي لك most beautiful. نفس الشيء عندك حاجة بعدين بتولي لك worse بعدين بتولي لك worst. لكن كيف بدت هي أصلا؟ باش ولت worst كده بدت بحاجة somewhere. All right, so think a little bit about this. Now, can you find another one? واحدة تانية زي worse حتى هي irregular مش متقيدة بالقاعدة. أنت طلعت الأول ترى. So another one like worst.
Better.
Correct? صح. That's right. This is another irregular comparative. What's the superlative of better?
Best.
صح. The best. And can you think of the original adjective? قبل ما نقوله better. كده قلنا حاجة قبل.
Better, best.
Okay, let's let Noha help you a little bit here. It's a good thing you found all of these. All right, so okay, so worse. What did it used to be before it became worse?
Bad.
Yeah. So you have a bad situation. You have a bad situation, and this bad situation becomes worse. And if you leave it for a long time, it will be the worst. Do you get the idea? The same thing with good. Oops, I answered it. Yeah.
Better, best.
Yeah, good. You can say the
better,
weather.
Best.
The weather is good today, and if you want to compare, I could say the weather today is better than yesterday. And if I want to compare with this week, I can say today is the best day of the week, or today we had the best weather this summer. You get the idea, Brian? Brian?
ما سمعت شيء بعد الجود ولا طار في الكونكشن.
All right, so we were saying that yeah, I can hear you. نسمع فيك احنا. تسمع فينا؟ Can you hear us?
ايه تو نسمع فيك.
Okay.
Yes.
Noah, can you tell us a little bit about good, bad, and can you give us examples of using good and bad and using better, worse?
Yesterday the weather was good, but today is better. And the last Monday was the best of this month. What's weather in this month?
Do you get the idea, Brahim? All right. Okay, can you do the same thing, Brahim, with using bad, worse, and worst?
Okay. شوية بس نفكر في حاجة نقول لها. Today's electricity is bad, but yesterday was worse.
Good.
But last week was the worst.
Very nice. صح. That's good. Okay. So الفكرة كلهم طبعا في الجود والباد وإنهما زوز إن هما irregular ما يتغيروش بالتغيير الطبيعي زي الثانيات اللي هي big, bigger, biggest. هذه هي الفكرة كلها في in question number 5. Do you get the idea, Brian?
Yes.
ففيها حتى واحدة ثانية
far,
further, the furthest.
yeah.
اللي هي number 4.
Further, إيه.
لأن هي أساسها كانت far. أو تقدر تقول further, furthest, the furthest. وتقدر تقول حتى farthest. It's done in 2 ways. It's a little irregular. لكن أعتقد good وباد irregular مازال أكتر. So we can say far, further, the furthest. Okay? But you can also say far, farther, the farthest. لكن الأولى more common. With a TH. You get the idea? لأن لو كانت regular لو قلنا far, farther, farthest صح ولا؟ لو تبعنا قاعدة طبيعية زي الثانية. لكن ما مشتش هي بالقاعدة الطبيعية لهذا that's why it's irregular. Okay, now number 6, Ibrahim. What are the opposites of more and most?
Less and least.
Correct. Less and least. All right, so I think we can move on. We can check the next question in this little grammar box. Okay, it says we can also use more and most with nouns. So it doesn't have to be with adjectives. You don't have to say more expensive, more interesting, more beautiful, right? You can also do it with nouns. So you can say here, like this example, it's got more space. It's got the most rooms. So space and rooms, these aren't adjectives. These are nouns.
Nouns.
Yeah. So more and most, you can use them with nouns. So this is, I think, a new thing, at least for someone who's maybe studied elementary and pre-intermediate, because usually we compare using adjectives. But here, they're showing you that you can also do it with nouns. You can compare using nouns too. It's got more space. Okay, so now let's look at the pink words. Okay, so in the pink words, we need to decide which pink words show a big difference and which pink words show a small difference, okay? So let's look at the pink words and let's find out. Which of these ones, Naha, do you think show a small difference? Which of them do you think show a big difference?
Slightly small difference. A little small difference. A bit small difference. Big difference. A lot. Far. Much.
Correct. Okay, a second question, which is maybe side question. Which of the small difference adverbs do you think are formal or more suitable for formal writing or formal language, and which of these do you think are more suitable for everyday language?
For writing, slightly.
Correct. What else?
Maybe far.
Correct.
And a bit. No, I don't think so. Maybe little.
Also better for spoken English. A bit and little, I think, are better for spoken English. Much, you can also use it in writing. It's also used. They use it
before noun or adjective like this.
Yeah, much noisier.
Adverb.
Yeah, much. All of these are adverbs. The pink words are adverbs. All of them are adverbs. Yes. Much noisier, much, because it's a lot better in writing if you say much noisier. It's better than saying a lot noisier. A lot is too informal. It's better to say it than write it. Okay, so we finished this part. We agreed which ones are for small difference and big difference. Now we want to take a look here. It says, look at the phrases in bold in these sentences, then answer the questions. These are the examples I started with, Ibrahim, if you remember. Can you read these 5 examples for us, please?
It's the same size as our house. It's not big as the other 2 places.
Can you do it again, number 2?
It's not as big as the other 2 places. It was different from anything else we have seen. It's as small as the one we have got now. It's very smaller to where we live now.
Similar, not smaller.
Similar.
Yeah.
إيه حسيتها غلط.
Yeah, similar. Okay. So the first question here, Brian. Which phrases mean the things we are comparing are the same? Which one means nearly the same? Which ones mean not the same? So in other words, you have like 3 categories, okay? So in these 5 sentences you just read, some of them are showing that you're talking about the same thing, you're comparing the same thing, or the comparison is the same. There's a group which shows the comparison is nearly the same, and there's a group or 1 or 2 examples which show not the same. Start with the first one. Which group do you think it belongs to?
The first one, the same. من البداية.
Yeah, it's the same. So maybe I'm comparing your house to mine. You can say your house is the same size as our house, right? So it means the same.
The second one, not the same.
Okay.
It's not as big as the other places. It was different from anything. The third one, not the same.
Okay.
It's different.
As small as. What do you think? It's as small as the one we've got now.
The same, I think.
Correct, it's the same.
And the last one, nearly the same.
Yes, it's nearly the same. Correct, that's correct. But here, what do you think about when we say it was different from anything else we've seen? Do you think the comparison is very different? Yes.
Very different.
Correct. All right, okay. Now, number 2, Naha, what about this one? What about the question here? Do we use
adjective or its comparative form with not as something as? The adjective, not its comparative.
Yes. So Ibrahim, what we're trying to do here in number 2, if you want to use this structure, تركيب هذه, the not as, حاجة as, you have to use the original adjective. You can't use a comparative with a superlative. Do you get the idea? So if I want to say your, for example, your computer is not as new as mine. I can't say not as newer or not as newest. No, I have to use the original adjective الأول. Well, I'm not as good as. For example, your class, your teacher is not as good as ours. Not as good as. Or your father is not as tall as, or your car is not as fast as. Do you get the idea? So in all these examples, we use the original adjective. ما استعملناش comparative or the superlative. Do you get the idea?
Yes.
All right, okay. So here we have a few examples. And listen and copy the stress. But before that, let's check the summary. Maybe there are extra tips about this all this mess here, page 139. Let's go there and let's check. 139. 140. Okay. All right. So this is the comparison thing. بنلخص لك كل شيء. All right. So we have lots of information here, but let's only check the important things. اوكي هذا الواضح طبعا الاول كله يا ابراهيم اللي ناقشناه قصه اما هم اللي تضيف لهم الاي ار والاي اس تي اللي هم القصيرونات هذول اللي هو ال one syllable adjectives and two syllable adjectives ending in y. To get the idea. So if you have اللي هم ending in y زي noisy, friendly, sunny, windy مثلا. Of course all of these you just remove the y and put IER. Noisy, noisier, noisiest. Windy, windier, windiest. Friendly, friendlier, friendliest. Okay? But the rest is clear. يوم هذا الجروب الأول الريجولر سهلة.
يعني تقدر تقول إن الكومباراتيف اللي بالإي آر لازم يكون most يعني أكثر حاجة two syllables بس.
Correct. وحتى two syllables اللي هم فيهم الواي. Not any two syllable adjective. Do you get the idea?
For example?
Like noisy, windy, sunny, friendly, chilly, right? All of these have y. Funny.
لا علاقة بالآي إنك تنحي الآي دير الواي دير آي.
Yes.
لكن زي شني مثلا
two syllable ما غير y.
two syllable ما تقدرش تدير لها اي ار.
I'm trying to think. I can't think of because usually most adjectives اللي هم two syllable أغلبهم فيهم الواي. إن كل ما نفكر في two syllable adjective تطلع لي حاجة فيها واي.
نتفكر إنه مرينا عليه في الآيلز هذا في الكتاب بتاع كورس الآيلز كان فيه حاجة هيك related لكن ونتفكر إني استك فيها وما قدرتش cannot يعني how to distinguish how to sort out the adjective that I can add ER to them and the other that I can't because there were even words with I think one or two syllables that we can add ER to them, but I cannot remember.
I think there are. I can't remember them now either, but I think these are more of exceptions rather than exceptions to the rule. But I think there are a few. Yes, you're right. I can't remember either. No, I think I'll have to look for that, but look it up. But I can't remember it now either. But generally speaking, هذا الرول الأول بتاع sort of elementary rule. الموضوع واضح. The second one حتى هي نفس الشيء يقولون عليهم هم two syllables. لو عندك two syllable or more على طول dear more و dear most. Okay. هي النقطة اللي أنت تكلمت عليها إبراهيم هي موضوع irregular adjectives, irregular comparatives اللي هم زي good, bad and far. You see? So these are a little different. Also you talked about less and least. واضحة. We use much, far, and a lot before a comparative to say there's a big difference. And we use slightly, a little, a bit to say there's a small difference. Okay, معناها حتى الفرق نفسه تقدر تتحكم فيه. لو أنت مثلا تقول bigger, my car is bigger than yours. حتى البيجر نفسها هذه نقدر نكون نحددها يعني I can qualify it. How bigger? Slightly bigger, a lot bigger, much bigger. Way bigger, far bigger. You get the idea, Ibrahim? So I can control how different it is. All right? Okay, so we use possessive s or possessive adjective before a superlative. Okay. All right, so usually superlative ديما في العادة قبل كانت القاعدة نحط معاهم the لكن تقدر تدير لهم حتى possessive adjective يمشي الحال. He's Peter's best friend. That's their oldest daughter. So you don't have to use the. You can also use possessive s, possessive s. Okay, if we compare two things, we use than. I think this is clear. We can use more or most with nouns. Okay, so I think there's nothing new left here. We can go and check what's left. Okay, so we have other ways to make comparisons. اوكي هو تقدر تقولوا لب موضوعنا او ما هو الجديد في حصة اليوم هو هذا. This part is the new part. Okay, so these are more interesting ways or more advanced ways of making comparisons instead of just saying bigger, bigger, the most biggest, I mean, the most interesting, the biggest. You get the idea. So these 4 or 5 different ways of making comparisons are more interesting and they will become more useful in written English later. So the first one is using the same plus noun as. هذه تركيبة لوني. All right. To talk to, oops, we want the line. To say that something is the same. So we say that it's the same size as our house. Can you think of an example like this, Ibrahim? Use the same and use a noun and use as. معناها أنت بتبدل بدل size بتدير حاجة تانية. Think of another noun. Ibrahim, are you there? Hello? Ibrahim? Noah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I think he disconnected or something.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, let me check his Facebook. Can you hear us? Or maybe he left, I don't know. Anyways, so, okay, what about you now? You can think of the example. Can you think of an example using the first structure here? It's the same something as something else.
He drink, I don't know, he drink coffee as same as I do.
So you can say, he ordered the same coffee as I did. Right? Because the key is these 3 words. So using the same, then you put the noun as, and then complete it. So the same coffee as mine, the same
As mine.
color as mine. Or here, mine can change. It could be any tense, but generally speaking, the same situation as ours. For example, you can say Egypt is going through the same situation as us, or the ours is maybe a little more formal. You get the idea? So the same noun as. Okay. What about the second one here? As adjective as, I think this is maybe a little easier to use. Can you give us an example? Think of any example, Naha, using as adjective as.
Apple is as good as pineapple.
Apples are as good as pineapples.
As good as pineapples.
Right, okay. Good example. Another way we can compare is using similar to plus noun. And the example here is, it's very similar to where we live now. So you can say it's similar to, and you can just use the noun.
It's similar to my shoes.
Yes, your shoes are similar to my shoes. Or your, for example, your car is similar to mine. Okay, now the third one, not as, this is just the opposite of the second way, right? Can you give us an example? How can you use this as an example?
Hello.
Hi, can you hear us? Ibrahim?
Your room Your room is not as spacious as mine.
Correct. Your room is not as spacious as mine. Correct. Ibrahim,
Yes.
are you there? صوت كان مختفي عندك. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, I think you missed the last part here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Noha, we can also use a different from plus now to say two people or two things are not the same. So it was different from anything else we've seen. Okay, can you think of an example like this?
Whether the weather in England or in the UK is different from United States of America.
Right. So the weather in the UK is different from the US, or different from the weather in Libya, if you want to make it a little longer.
From the weather, yeah.
Ibrahim, are you there?
Yes.
All right, so this is the focus of today's lesson, these 4 or 5 different ways of comparing things. So there's more than one way to compare things. So I think because we're almost out of time, but I think you need to cover this and at least check the examples, and maybe you need to do this as homework. So you can know the difference between using the old system, bigger, biggest, the easy one. My house is bigger than yours. My car is faster than yours. This sort of basic one. And using these structures. So instead of saying my car is faster than yours, you can say my car is not, or your car is not as fast as mine, right? Or I can say my car is different from your car.
Yes.
Yeah.
My
or I can say your car
to
to a turtle. It's similar to a tortoise or to a snail, if I want to make fun of your car. You get the idea?
Yeah.
So these are important ways and more interesting ways of making comparisons than using the old comparative and the old superlative, okay? So I think you need to maybe check them again at home, and also look for comparative and superlative in your grammar book.
Okay.
So when you study it, just try to look in the index and try to find comparative superlative. You will definitely find the first part we were talking about, اللي هي الطريقة لنا هذا كله يعتبر هذا بتاع one syllable adjective, ER, EST, لأن هذا يعتبر basics of comparisons. Okay, so you'll definitely find this in your book. You might هو أنت بتاعك pre-intermediate intermediate صح ولا؟ الجرامر book.
ما ركزتش.
Yeah, if it's a pre-intermediate intermediate book, you'll also find this. اللي هو اتكلمنا عليه اليوم. It will also be included if it's a pre-intermediate intermediate grammar book. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see if there's anything quick we can talk about before we close our session. So we talked about different houses, different ways of comparison. We checked here. I think the listening will have to skip it for now. It's about strong forms and weak forms. Okay, let's do this one, Brian. So the terraced house in Bishopston, let's read the question. They want you to use comparative or superlative forms of the adjective in the brackets. So they give us the adjective here. This is the one they want you to use. And you just need to make it into comparative and superlative, okay? So the first one is, you can say the terraced house. So you have to start every sentence by saying the terraced house in Bishopston is the smallest of the 3 properties. What about number 2?
The terraced house in Bishopston is nearer to the shops than the flat.
Correct. لأن عندك than معناها
إيه،
ما تقدرش
مقارنة.
تستعمل. Yes, it's a comparative.
Comparative.
You can't use, of course, you cannot use superlative. Nearer. Okay, the next one, Brian, can you do number 3?
The terraced house in Bishopston is least expensive of the 3 properties.
Okay.
And superlative.
صح هو least expensive. The terraced, yes, it is the least expensive. All right, so let's write the least expensive.
Yeah, مكتوبة تمام.
مكتوبة هي expensive. لكن لازم تتغير هي. غيرناها في الأول. Okay, next, same thing for the next one. Or I have a better idea. You can think of number 7, 8, and 9. Okay, Brahim, and we'll let Noah do number 5, 4, 5, 6. So you think of 7, 8, 9. Okay, number 4, 5, and 6. Now, how would you change them?
In a busier street than the terraced house.
Okay, of course you have to start from the detached house in Redland is, but your answer is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a comparative, clear comparative.
Is much more attractive than the flat.
Right.
The farthest from the city center. The farthest.
Okay. All right, Ibrahim, number 7.
The top floor flat in Hot Wheels is a lot brighter inside than the 2 houses.
Right. Number 8.
The top floor flat in Hot Wheels is much modern of the 3 properties.
We want a superlative here.
Modernist.
How do we make a superlative?
Most modern.
Correct. And you have to say the most.
The most modern, yeah.
All right, the last one.
The top floor flat in Hot Wheels is in the most friendly neighborhood in the city.
Actually, with friendly, I think, no, if you remember, it's one of the optional ones. You can say more friendly, most friendly, and you can say friendly or friendliest. I'm not sure about this, but I'll check. Because I think it friendly can be done in both ways. No, I think I'm mistaken. The general rule is 2-syllable adjectives, 2-syllable adjectives ending in Y is just ER. Of course, you remove the Y and put IER or IEST. So what do you want here, Ibrahim? Do you want to use a superlative or comparative? You have to tell me.
Superlative.
Correct. And how do we change friendly to superlative?
Most friendly.
You don't need most for friendly.
Friendliest.
Correct. And you have to add the
friendliest.
Without most. The friendliest. The friendliest neighborhood. Friendliest neighborhood. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So so this is just a little exercise. Of course, here we're talking about the old comparatives اللي هم في المستويات اللي فاتوا. The new ones are, of course, in number 8, which we'll start with, inshallah, on Thursday. We'll do that. We'll also have a little revision for what we talked about the stuff we covered here today. So that's all for today. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you on Thursday. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.